Turkish Airlines presents Business Africa.
Hello and a warm welcome to this edition of Business Africa. I'm your host, Afolake Oyiloye. Here's what's making headlines. At the 2024 UN General Assembly, African nations are focusing on empowering their youth, tackling climate change, and ensuring sustainable urban growth for a more resilient future. Dangote petroleum refinery launches petrol production in Nigeria, aiming to alleviate fuel scarcity. The $20 billion facility is set to boost domestic supply and economic stability. Adani Group announces $1.8 billion expansion plan for Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Privatization efforts spark backlash with critics citing concerns over integrity and corruption. The 2024 United Nations General Assembly highlights Africa's pressing issues such as climate change and economic inequality. UNGA has been essential for African nations to raise awareness of its greatest challenges. In the following report, we explore the details.
The 2024 United Nations General Assembly, themed Leaving No One Behind, Acting Together for Peace, Sustainable Development and Human Dignity for Present and Future Generations, focuses on critical issues for Africa, including climate change and economic inequality. With over 60% of Africans under 25, this year's discussions emphasize empowering youth and women to shape the continent's future. Historically, the Assembly has been essential for African nations to raise awareness of challenges like poverty, climate change, and peacekeeping. This year, African leaders are exploring sustainable urban development strategies to prevent social inequalities amid rapid urbanization. Public-private partnerships are crucial for sustainable development in Africa, combining government non-profit and private sector strengths. Green technologies and sustainable business practices are also very vital as African cities grow.
We have an opportunity to leapfrog in terms of sustainability and in terms of environmental and social sustainability. Well, we're inviting a lot of our developers to build green buildings. A couple of our developers ended up getting IFC EDGE certification, which allows for resource efficiency. What that does for the city is it creates a more resilient city because we consume less resources, so less electricity, less water.
Experts suggest that as the world enters an era of artificial intelligence and digital transformation, African countries have a unique opportunity to leapfrog traditional development models by adopting innovative technologies.
Joining us from New York is Farida Yahya. She's the president of Mandela Washington Fellowship Alumni Association of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us on the show. Now, in line with this year's UNGA, what key challenges do African nations face in achieving sustainable development and peace?
I think there are a couple of crises and challenges that African nations are having to deal with when it comes to leaving no one behind. The first one, I would say, climate change. Right off the bat, I'll start off with the Maiduguri floods that we're seeing in the northeast part of Nigeria. We have snow happening in September in South Africa. You have a huge climate crisis happening also in Ethiopia and other parts of Africa. So I would say that's one of the major crises that we're having to grapple with when it comes to sustainable development and leaving no one behind. The second thing would be social inequalities and a bit of instability when it comes to making sure that people are taking along and you're also building the right resources, especially in terms of like poverty alleviation, and not just poverty alleviation, but also people being able to take care of themselves and their households and being able to contribute to their household incomes. So those are two major issues that I know that keep growing. A third one would be food insecurity, which again, could be mind-baffling for someone who understands Africa, like myself, because we know the abundance of food that is there. But then there's a high food wastage, and because of that, there's a huge food crisis and food insecurity because people are not able to, again, go from farm to table sustainably. And even when they're able to, there's high inflation.
Now, ensuring social equity and environmental sustainability are some of the hot topics. Now, how can Africa manage urban growth?
There are a couple of ways I believe that we can do that. The first one I would say is we need to reduce rural-urban migration. But how do we do that? Because now a lot of people are moving from the rural areas to the urban areas, and we're having a housing crisis, we're having pollutions, we're having people being out of jobs, even though they are, congested in those urban areas. So I think the first thing I would say is that we need to make sure that there's better public transportation, there's better infrastructure in the rural areas, and also we're able to do more subnational development, right? More people in the rural areas need to feel like they're included, not just in the policies and the conversations that are happening, but also ensuring that sustainable development is also happening there. When you put those structures in place, then you can be able to discourage people from doing rural to urban migration. And that way you're able to make sure that people have what they need in the rural areas and they don't feel the need to, create congestion and housing problems.
Now, what policies should African leaders focus on to achieve inclusive economic growth?
I think the first thing I would say is an investment in education, especially because we're in the age of technology and innovation. AI is, taking over the world, and a lot of people are skeptical because they don't understand how it works. Technology is meant to be an enabler. It's meant to make your life easier. And if we invest in the right way in technology and innovation, then more people are being carried along. The second thing I would say is, like I said, social inclusion. Women's rights is something that is very dear to me, and I feel like it's really important that we move from words to action. There's a lot of conversation around women's rights in Kenya, in Namibia, in South Africa, and so many other African countries, including the DRC. However, I think that when we look at certain policies that need to be put into place, then we need to make sure that those policies are inclusive and also are taken up across board.
Madam Yaya, thank you so much for those insights.
Thank you, Falake. Thank you so much for this.
The Dangote petroleum refinery in Lagos has begun petrol production as of September 15, 2024. This $20 billion facility, the largest single-train refinery in the world, aims to produce 650,000 barrels per day, addressing Nigeria's fuel scarcity and exporting the rest.
The $20 billion Dangote petroleum refinery has rolled out its first petrol on September 15th in Lagos, Nigeria. Around 500 tankers from the Nigerian National Petroleum Company has to lift 25 million litres of petrol per day, efforts to end the long queues of fuel scarcity in Nigeria.
So the 650,000 barrels per day that we've done is the largest single train, not only in Africa, in the world.
44% of the refinery's petrol production will cover the fuel needs of Nigeria, while 56% will be exported. Nigeria is Africa's leading oil producer, but imports almost all its fuel since all its 4 refineries have not been operational.
Saving our nation foreign exchange and also earning foreign exchange, which will stabilize the naira, and it will also help bring down inflation and cost of living.
Nigeria's fuel pump price has seen an increase of almost 45% in September, despite its inflation exceeding 33% in July. However, the government remains hopeful.
What Nigerians can look forward to is energy security, energy sufficiency, and as we look forward, we can also look at the issue of cost.
Nigerians expect a sharp fall in the pump price of petrol, with its positive effects following.
Kenya's $1.8 billion deal with Adani Group to privatize Jomo Kenyatta International Airport faces backlash. Critics question Adani's integrity and claim the deal lacked due process. We have the detailed report.
Valued at about $8.5 billion, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is a regional aviation hub and Kenya's major strategic investment. The government is in the process of privatizing the aviation facility, a move lauded by some experts. Indian multinational Adani Group is working on the now controversial public-private partnership deal with the Kenya Airports Authority to take over the expansion and operation of JKIA. The Adani Group intends to invest $1.8 billion to take over the airport for 30 years.
For a long time, the aviation sector in this country has been running into losses. We don't remember any time, there's no record of Kenya Airports Authority or its affiliated entities making profit. So it's high time that as a country, we need to focus into privatization.
The government of Kenya is projected to receive $45 million in 2025 and $52 million in 2030. The deal is, however, facing a resistance with workers at the Kenya Airports Authority and a section of the political class and civil society.
The people of Kenya are against this Adani deal, and they have legitimate concerns that must be addressed, including the credibility of Adani. We've heard about other nations that are complaining about their integrity. Now, if they are already such kind of magnitude of complaint, why do we want to surrender such critical infrastructure to an entity with questionable integrity?
The growth of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has been hampered by corruption and previous breach of contractual agreement that cost the aviation facility millions of dollars in contractual compensation.
That wraps up this edition of Business Africa. Thank you for joining us. For more in-depth stories and news, stay tuned to Africa News and Africanews.com.
Business Africa was presented by Turkish Airlines.